Amanda Schmidt.
Hello.
How are you today?
I'm good.
Welcome to another episode of Outwit Outlast, the podcast devoted to all things Survivor. If you haven't tuned in before, I'm your co-host Geoff, and this is co-host Amanda. And together we're gonna be super joyful about the last episode of Survivor, which I thought was just terrifically good TV. And a little bit I feel that way because I felt a little bit of justice was served. And now the game feels open and interesting to me
Yes.
again. And I take back everything pessimistic I said last episode.
I'm not 100% like all is forgiven with the Survivor gods, but this was a really fun episode, and I won't spend too much time complaining about the edit this time, I promise.
It sure was nice to see Cirie having so many great moments this episode. Um,
Yes.
but we'll talk about Cirie in a second.
Should we first start
Oh,
by recapping this episode in the form of haiku in honor of R.I.P. Coach?
absolutely. I have a haiku, and do you have a haiku?
I might have forgotten it, but I did think about one.
You should start so that my
Okay.
haiku doesn't blow your haiku out of your brain. Which, not that my
Okay.
haiku is any better than Coach.
Cast splits into pairs. Cirie, Fields, and fake idol mean. Coach and Chrissy leave.
Okay. Not,
Not a super fun haiku. There was just too much information to try to fit into it.
I tried to boil it down to the essence, the spirit of the episode.
A vibes haiku.
Coach in a hammock did not save him from the vote. Chrissy went home too.
Yeah, mine was much more informative, but yours was like a way better haiku.
No, I realize the thing that all of us are missing about haikus is it's not really just about syllables, it's about how you stack images. You know,
Yeah.
like, you know, it's really
And it's
about,
definitely,
it's three
you can't
building
like
blocks, you know, you got to end with some natural image there, I think, that resonates in a tonal way.
well, Coach in a hammock was like could really be in a haiku, I
I
think.
think Coach in a Hammock should be the name of a band.
It's his like next Ponderosa band. It's him and Dee and
Oh
Chrissy.
my God, just think about D, Coach, and Chrissy at Ponderosa now.
I like can't even imagine what that will be like.
Well,
What a weird dysfunctional family.
for sure, but you know what? D seems to show up with a lot of joy and a lot of love for the game, and she, in her post game interviews, she just seemed to underscore the idea that what she liked the most about after the game was getting in touch with the people that didn't take it too seriously,
Yeah.
which makes me think that there is a lot of bad blood going on after this season with a couple parties, but I don't think it's
Yeah.
D. You know, I think D is sort of a forgive and forget. It's just a game player.
No, I agree. I just think that she and Coach won't have a lot to talk about, but I don't think that Dee is going to be resentful towards either of them.
Well, it'd be nice if Dee and Chrissy could touch base because, you know, in some ways, well, I guess I think Chrissy was always playing from behind in her season, and I think Dee was always pretty much in control of her season, but
Yeah, they were pretty different players
yeah.
in a lot of ways, but both really strong, cool women. And
Hmm.
I wish we had seen like a little more of Chrissy this season. Like I
Yeah.
think that just hearing people talk in like the last in Dee's interview and then in this episode, people talk as if Chrissy was in charge of that alliance. People talk as if Chrissy was in charge of Coach. In that episode, Chrissy was 100% in charge of Coach.
Oh yeah,
She said to sit in the hammock and he sat in the
I
hammock.
know. I
And
loved it.
why didn't we see that in the edit? Why did we just see her being sort of shamed and like humiliated? I don't know. I just felt kind of sad that the story that we saw was just she was bullied on her first season and people found her annoying this season, when what was really happening seems to have been at least partially that, but also partially that she was kind of running the show for a while.
I agree.
Like, why? It would have been more satisfying to see her go, even at this stage, if I had understood what a power player she was sooner. So, a little bummed by that, but otherwise, happy with this episode and happy to dive in.
Okay. My theory about that edit, by the way, is that they were just trying to bookend those two moments. The coach shaming her, which affected her in a way that was probably uncharacteristic, they kept in the edit so that they could have the moment when she shamed coach into shutting up and sitting
Yeah,
down. So they
maybe.
just wanted the reversal and they edited for that.
I did like that little bookend. Like, it was very satisfying to see Chrissy say, sit in the hammock.
In so many ways, I found this episode satisfyingly resolving some conflicts that had been bugging me because I didn't have
Yeah,
faith that they were going to resolve in a
yeah,
way that was going to be interesting for me as a viewer, and also setting up the second half of the season in a terrific way.
yeah.
I'm so excited about that, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. New twist, new
New
twist,
twist.
new twist. I loved the new twist. I thought it made for a really great challenge. I thought it made for some really interesting strategy when when the outcome was done. I thought it was. I thought it made me see the new players in a brand new light almost always. Like
Yeah,
I saw new sides of Joe. I saw new sides of Aubrey. I saw new sides of almost everybody. I love seeing Stephanie and Ozzy play together because they're so competent. Like
yeah,
they're just so athletic and coordinated and on point. I
yeah,
mean, Jonathan and Christian being together just showed me a little bit more. I think Jonathan is a complicated player, but he does have a tendency to kind of try and throw his weight around a little bit. He snapped
yeah.
at Christian in that challenge in a way that he didn't have to,
I agree.
and I think that's a flaw of his. On the other hand, what a smart move it was for him to pick Christian. When you think about it, and he
Yeah.
didn't know what the twist was going to be.
I think he picked Christian just because the two of them together could tackle most kinds of challenges. Like, I'm sure that's why he picked him. Like, he was like, this guy's really good at puzzles. I'm really good at lifting heavy things. We'll work well together. But it worked very well in that it also balanced them in the scope of whether they would be voted out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, they had to know a little bit. There were only two pairs that were from the same alliance, really.
Yeah.
And that to me suggests that most people were thinking about, they didn't know exactly what the twist was going to be, but they were like hedging their bets a little bit in their choices.
I think in the past, when they've picked pairs, it's been someone that they would ultimately have to compete against in the immunity challenge. And then for pairs that lost, it's sort of guaranteed like this is someone who I might have in the pool of people to vote for. I think there's a strategy to picking someone who's not in your alliance because you want to ultimately beat them for the immunity if that's the world they live in, which is probably what they were thinking about. So I feel like that might be part of why there were sort of cross alliance pairs like that.
Yeah.
But it did work out in a really interesting way. Like, I'm not sure they would have made the same decisions if they had known this was the twist. And I'm really glad they didn't know because it was such an interesting breakdown. And the strategy behind picking someone to be voted out with would also be really interesting.
Yeah.
But I thought it was more interesting to see them adapt to it. Yeah.
I'm not sure it's a twist they could do again, without disguising it, because people will change. It would affect the choices. However, I will also say that the complexity of the advantages when they're in pairs like that was also really interesting, especially the shot in the dark.
Well, because the shot in the dark kind of becomes way more powerful in this scenario. Like, not to compliment Coach, but I think it made sense to use it in this
Yeah,
case. Like, you have basically a 1 in 5 chance of going home, and the shot in the dark has a 1 in 6 chance of saving you
right.
and someone else.
Right.
Like, that does, I think, make sense to play it if you
Yeah,
feel at all like the votes are going on you.
yeah, for sure. So I was a big fan. You seem to have some reservations about it.
I mostly liked it. I thought it was interesting. The strategy was interesting. One thing that I didn't love about it was that I thought it like really limited the options. Like Geoff is kind of all about limiting the options at the merge. Like I think he doesn't like these like big
Yeah,
14, 13 person tribal councils,
right.
and I sort of get that. Like the D vote last episode was kind of boring and it was kind of a typical immediately post merge thing where they're all sort of freaked out and just want to agree on someone. So I think it made it more interesting in that way, but it also really limited the options because it's 6 pairs, one has immunity, so that's 5 pairs to choose from. But you get a pair like Christian and Jonathan, they're basically immune
Yeah,
because there are 4 people who are not going to write Jonathan's name down, and there are at least 3 people that are
yeah,
not going to write Christian's name down. So no one's even going to try to muster up the votes to vote those 2 out.
yeah.
So, although, like a side note, I do think that if Cirie somehow could have pulled off voting those 2 out, that might have actually been the best choice for her game because it would have pulled from those 2 separate alliances in a really damaging way. But yeah, so then you suddenly only have 4 people left, but like 2 of those pairs have idols, and one of them has a fake idol. So like kind of then you're just down to 1 pair. You know?
So,
Like I just think it limits the options a lot, and at a point in the game when there are a lot of idols in play, like if Aubrey had still had her idol,
mm,
it would have truly been worst case scenario, kind of only Coach and Chrissy on the chopping block. And they have shots in the dark.
yeah. It's funny that Rizzo talked a little bit about playing his idol, but Ozzy didn't seem to have much thought about it that we saw in the edit.
I think Ozzy and Stephanie were also a pair who were pretty shielded by having 2 sort of separate alliances.
Yeah,
Not that Stephanie realized their alliances were separate, but
yeah,
I think they were in a way that made them safe.
yeah. And it was so much clearer now, thank goodness, that the middle is actually the poly trio. They're the only, they're the only ones in the middle. Everything else is a left faction and a right faction. You know,
Yeah. And Tiffany.
I think Tiffany belongs to the left faction now, just sort of by default. She's certainly not gonna. She's gonna vote with them, not with the old people, and they will be happy for her vote. So,
Yeah, because just to break it down, we have the 5 honor and integrity people. We have the 4 people that they're calling the middle,
right,
but in their heads, the middle is 4 people between the 5 of them, plus they think they have Cirie and Ozzy. And then on the other side, it's just Tiffany. And I think that Chrissy and Stephanie did not register Rizzo as being on their side, but like Coach did. So truly in Coach's world, it's an 8 person alliance,
yeah.
a 1 person alliance, and 4 people in the middle, which is so absurd to me.
It's not you're not fighting an alliance when you whittled it down to one person that you want to vote out. That's just you're
Yeah.
just a bully. It's not a fight.
No, you're now just fighting a different alliance that you have dubbed the middle,
I was
which is Rick, Christian, Emily, and Aubrey.
I was so sure that it was that Coach had like recruited Rizzo. They all saw Rizzo as playing with them, but nobody talked about Rizzo as belonging to the old guard alliance. Even Rizzo didn't talk about it
Yeah.
particularly, which
I
is
think
wise.
Coach I think Coach saw it that way a little bit, but I think that was it.
Chrissy never would have worked with him. She said, she'd heard the
Yeah.
rumor about how he played his idol in the last season, and she didn't want anything to do with him.
Which she wasn't wrong about.
And that, she was right. But anyway, now we truly do have a pretty even um, couple of alliances. I'm super interested in what's going to happen with Joe and Tiffany.
They really bonded this episode.
Yeah,
They worked together well. Joe said to Tiffany, I'm never going to write your name
I
down.
know.
And I think when Joe says that, he means it.
What I thought was very interesting in that moment was that Tiffany did not make the same promise back to Coach. So,
Or to Joe.
I mean to Joe. So I don't think she's got any grudges, particularly that I know of, but she was careful not to make a promise she didn't want to keep, which maybe means that
Yeah.
she does respect the friendship that they're they're nurturing.
I think that's possible. And I think that with Joe, you have to be really careful about what you say.
Yeah.
Because I think that
Yeah.
Rizzo, I was really nervous when Rizzo said we have to tell Joe about the plan to vote Coach and Chrissy out because I was like, Joe's not going to like that. But I think that Rizzo was coming from the right
Yes.
place. And I think Cirie, in agreeing with him, also understood that, like,
Yeah.
blindsiding Joe is way worse
Yeah.
than kind of forcing Joe's hand to vote in a way that he doesn't want to.
Joe doesn't have to agree with you. He may oppose you. He obviously did. He may be bitter about it. He was, but he will at least respect the fact that you told him. And
Yeah,
so you're not burning a bridge. You're just setting up
exactly.
some tension. But that's part of the game.
And I think that Cirie did a really good job picking the right side here
Yes.
because I think that it was kind of 5-4-3-1 in my head, where Tiffany's sort of the one.
Mm.
And Cirie and Rizzo and Ozzy had the chance to either take out two of the four or two of the five. And so, just numbers wise, it makes sense to take out two of the five. But I also think that of that five, two of them are kind of in Cirie and Ozzy's pocket. And it's neither of the two that they sent home.
Right.
Like, they weren't really working with Coach and Chrissy very closely. They are working with Stephanie and with Joe.
Yeah.
So I think keeping those two in the game while getting rid of two strong allies for them was really smart.
Yeah.
Like, I think that they're kind of well positioned now to take a shot at Christian and Rick
Yeah.
and Emily and Aubrey.
Yeah. Agreed. Well, the twist was one thing that brought my heart a lot of joy. Cirie's whole game and the focus on Cirie this episode made me really happy. She was like a politician, the way that she wrangled the senators to vote for what was obvious to her. It was
It's
masterful.
beautiful.
She's always that good.
Yeah.
It was just so nice to see it really fully displayed. And Cirie didn't have the time or the patience or the inclination or whatever to do it subtly, one person at a time. She just sat blocks down. She just said, "This is what we got to do. You're crazy if you don't do this. Here's why. It makes sense. This is what we're doing."
But she strong arms people in such a good natured way.
Yes.
Like, she's like, it would be so silly not to do this. And you're like, you're
Yes.
right, Suri. And I'm
Usually,
so glad she
yeah.
was there for this vote. Like, I
Yes.
think that she was the only person not paired up. She went off,
Yeah.
she did her challenge, she sorted through her 2,000 coconuts and
Yeah.
came back. And I actually don't know how this would have gone if she hadn't come back, because clearly Ozzy really misread the situation. It was so funny that he was like, well, it seems like Cirie would do this, so that's what we should do. And then Cirie came back and she was like, no, Ozzy, obviously we want to take out Chrissy and Coach. And Ozzy was like, oh, I didn't see it that way, but you're right. Like, he was so immediately on board. He's like he and Rizzo are both like little puppy dogs just following her everywhere she goes.
I
It's
know.
adorable and I love it. And she's so smart and she's so good at immediately getting people to do what she made this almost a unanimous vote, which is crazy because that was a 5-person alliance.
Yeah. I also really appreciated the time that they gave Suri in the Exile challenge to talk about her journey, to give some flashbacks, to remind us of what a terrific player she's been, to show us what this game means, this particular season means to her. Like, it was nice to see all of that. I wish that they had been able to do more of that sooner. I'm starting to suspect, Amanda, that maybe they've been saving a little bit so that the dramatic impact of what we saw last night would be more resonant.
Maybe.
Maybe it's not the skewed edit. Maybe it's a strategic edit to try to get dramatic moments to pop more.
It's possible. I just think they have been laying the groundwork for us to understand this alliance that Cirie has set up with her
Yeah.
and Rizzy and Ozzy. Rizzy, Rizzo
Frizzy.
and Ozzy. And it's clear that she's at the center of it. I'm just confused about why so much of that three-person alliance has been narrated by Rizzo and Ozzy. Like, if Cirie's gonna be dominant and it's gonna be dramatically entertaining and impressive when she is and a little surprising, I get why you would play it down a little bit in the edit. But, like, when they have been showing the work that she's been doing in the edit, it's weirdly to me been narrated less by her than it is by her allies. And that makes me a little confused about what perspective they're trying to tell the story from. I don't know. I just wish we had,
Well,
like, I think we could have seen a little more of her without, like, ruining the pleasure that was this episode.
I think that Rizzo is getting a disproportionate amount of the narrative edit. But I
Yeah,
think Ozzy and Cirie, I bet you, have the same amount of confessional time. Let's
they don't.
block it. But
No, I'm telling you, I've seen the numbers. Ozzy has the most confessional time on the season by far, and
really?
Cirie before this episode was like sixth or seventh.
Okay.
Yes,
I would also say that Cirie's narration has given us the language for that group. She's the one that
that's
calls
true.
them the poly trio or whatever she calls them, you know. She's the one that sort of narrated us into understanding the way that they operate. She's the one that's given us a kind of lexicon for the season in a way. So it's, it could be that I love every time Cirie is in confessional, especially. I love it.
Yeah,
And seeing her interact with other players is a delight every time it happens. I wish there was
yeah.
more of it. I don't quite understand why Ozzy, if that's true, has so many confessionals. It didn't. If he does, they're not landing in my imagination the way that Cerie's do, or Rizzo's do, for
Yeah,
that matter. Because
yeah.
Rizzo's really a good narrator, you know.
Yeah, he is.
And it's funny too how Christian's narration has receded as
It
the season
has.
has taken this turn, you know. So I'll be curious to see where we go. Like, I don't know that we've had a ton of Jonathan narration in the oddly enough, and he's been a major player.
I think that is one of the flaws of just looking at confessionals as your metric for what percent of the edit someone's getting,
Hmm.
because it is true that, like, Cirie has had fewer confessionals, but, like, probably a larger portion of the confessionals are talking about Cirie than are talking about other players.
There.
So I think that's, like, one thing worth considering. And then there's a lot of time when people like Jonathan are on screen, but they're doing things like strategizing and, like actively game playing. I think one thing that I would point to in terms of Cirie's edit versus, like, Ozzy's edit is, if you look back at that first episode, that's part of the reason that Ozzy has such a dominant, like, confessional count this season is because he got a ton of confessionals that first episode. But we could have seen more of Cirie talking about building this relationship with Ozzy. But, like, that first episode, most of them becoming very close was narrated by Ozzy, and most of what we saw with Cirie was just her feeling really embarrassed about
Oh
her
yeah,
challenge performance in
that's
that
true.
first episode. I just think there's a little bit of a pattern of, like, women's stories kind of being about being embarrassed this season, and the men are the ones narrating the action. But I agree with you that, like, Cirie is still super central to this season, and the confessional count might not exactly reflect that. But, like, in the same way that Jonathan is central now, without having a huge number of confessionals, like, I think that it's not just about the confessionals that drives what makes someone feel like a central character. I don't know. I'm curious about what it'll look like the rest of the season.
Where do you find your numbers, by the way? I want to see the rest of that too.
The Survivor Fact Checker account on Instagram has a lot of the, like, confessional accounts. I haven't seen it after this latest episode,
I'd
so
like
it's possible that she's way higher up in the ranking now. But you should take a look because, like, after last episode, the top 5 were men.
Tiffany had a lot more screen time. in
Yeah.
every way, confessional and action,
Yep.
super cool to see. I wonder what to make of the fact that Emily doesn't have much happening on screen right now. Anyway, the highlighting of Cirie right here in the middle of the season, very welcome. Another thing that brought great gladness to my heart, and it did feel like, in certain ways, this episode was righting some wrongs. And if the edit has been a wrong, this episode went a little way in righting that wrong. You know,
Yeah.
another Geoff was wrong last podcast about
You, Geoff?
Geoff Schmidt was wrong in thinking that this was going to turn into a season dominated by the old guard group. I,
There are too many good strategic players
yeah,
on this season for that to have
you're
happened.
right, and they really came through this time. Even if the twist hadn't made it so kind of easy in a way to redress the power
Yeah.
imbalance, I still think something like it could have happened. So,
Yeah, I think so. And um who knows how much Rick Devens's fake idol played a role in that outcome, but it sure was fun to watch, and it sure was a nice little bow tied onto something that was set up a long time ago.
listen, I have to say, first of all, I was just so in love with the idea of it. Like that's the kind of thing I wish every season had players that did stuff like that. Maybe they do, and I just don't see it. But it's quirky and it's funny and it's a long shot and it's just having fun with the game, and I think it's terrific. But his execution of it was so much better than I could have
So good.
imagined. Like
Yeah.
the way that he pretended to like rip apart the stuff
Yeah.
looking for it, like he didn't just grab it because he hid it there. He had to search for it, in a way that
Mhm.
Emily's expression was so awesome.
I know. All the way down to telling Aubrey I couldn't play it on us because I'm not allowed to play it until next tribal council. Like, I don't know if that's a lie she's gonna buy. And this season, they've all been doing such a great job of calling people on their bullshit. Tiffany did it to Coach this episode in pretty epic
Yeah,
fashion. So who knows if that'll actually work? But I do think it was a smart way to immediately see the tension that this would cause and to find a way to diffuse it a little.
yeah. Oh yeah, no, it was smart. The I don't think I don't think anybody's really believing that it's an idol. But it doesn't matter. It served its purpose. He picked the right time to do it.
It did throw people off their game. We can roll the tapes back. I was skeptical that it would affect anything. And I think that this vote, regardless, would have been Coach and Chrissy
Yeah,
going home. So arguably he wasted the moment. But it was fun to watch, so it wasn't a waste. And
yeah,
it did really throw people off.
yeah.
And I'm not sure anyone changed their vote, but I think Steph might have. The only people who didn't vote for Coach and Chrissy were Coach who played a shot in the dark, Chrissy, and Jonathan,
Yeah.
which means that Joe, we know, wrote down Chrissy, but because Cirie and Rizzo told him to.
Yeah.
And we know that Steph voted Coach and Chrissy, but I don't know why. It's possible they brought her in on the vote last minute and she was upset about it. It's also possible that she really thought that Rick had found an idol and was gonna play it and switched her vote. I'm not
Yeah.
sure if that's what happened.
She did seem to be the person that was most flustered by the
Yeah.
possibility of an idol and believe it. I have only one small little quibble is that Christian missed an opportunity to really sell it by fake inspecting it. But it could have been dangerous because if he inspected it, others might have shoved their way in and it was blown
Yeah.
it. And maybe Christian was just pretending not to be in on it to protect his game a little bit. I don't know.
Listen, Christian this season has been doing a good job of putting all the heat on Rick. He did
Yeah,
it with the boomerang idol.
yeah,
I can see the decision he made last night being actually him saying, eventually it will become clear to everyone that this is a fake idol.
yeah,
I don't want to be so publicly caught up
right.
in the lie.
Yes.
Like, because it's a great lie.
Yes.
Rick Devens loves attention. He's got a
Yes.
little bit of an ego. He's the right person to do this. I think Christian knows that ultimately doing something really flashy like this could hurt his game.
Yeah.
And even if eventually it comes out that Christian helped Rick pull this off, I think that it would be way worse on him if he had been with Rick lying in the moment than if people sort of suspect that he was involved in it, but like
Yeah.
it's kind of unclear. I don't know how many people are left that watched Christian fall at that tribal council. I
Oh,
guess Emily, Cirie, and Ozzy, right?
yeah, a fair number.
So enough to like maybe if they did eventually realize that Christian fake fell so that Rick could plant it, they would be like, okay, Christian is super in on this. But I think that's probably why he didn't try to work with Rick to sell it more. And it would have been kind of more fun if he had, but I think maybe strategically the right move by him.
Do you
And
think?
he kind of didn't need to. Like, if Steph switched her vote even after Rick refused to show it to her,
Yeah.
like, nobody really needed to look at it and sell it.
Do you think Rick is gonna try to keep the charade going?
I do.
Isn't that just gonna draw heat towards him? People are gonna want to flush his idol.
But if he can convince them that it's real and somehow manage to pull off what Rizzo pulled off last season, it would be so much more incredible to watch someone continue to bluff their way out of getting votes when it's not even a real idol.
Here's my poetic justice hope. I don't hope for it because I love Devens, but it would be sweetly poetic if, in trying to continue this charade and pull a Rizzo, he just draws the vote to him next time and gets voted out. Like
Yeah.
he can't play a fake idol. He knows it. So the very figment, the fantasy thing is the thing that gets him voted out.
Yeah. And it's possible. But I also think that Rick, I think of all of them, Rick might be playing with house money more than the rest at this point. Like we talked about it last week, Dee's playing with house money.
Yeah.
I know Rick almost won his season, and that probably hurts. But in all the pre press and in almost every confessional, he just seems like he kind of wants to make an entertaining season and wants to entertain himself. Like he talks about Christian, he's like, that's the guy I'm having the most fun playing with.
Right.
Like I think he's really valuing having fun. And if he ends up getting voted out because he had too much fun with a fake idol, I think he wouldn't regret that. But I don't know. I'm always like putting words into people's mouths, but
Yeah.
it's just like obviously all speculation. I can't know what any of them were thinking at any point.
I think in some ways Dee and Devens are similar players. They just enjoy the game and enjoy
Yeah.
playing. It's fun. It's play.
Yeah.
The players that get super serious about stuff like Joe and Devens
Yeah.
butt heads because
Yeah.
Joe is very rigid in his thinking and it's not play, it matters.
Yeah.
Um, Coach is another thing altogether, but we can talk about that maybe. I,
Maybe.
I, I was so happy to see Coach go. And yet, in a weird way, I'm not going to miss him. If he was just a clown, I would miss him. But he's sort of a malicious clown, and I
Yeah.
didn't like the way he treated people. You saw it even with Tiffany. Like, why is
Mm-hmm.
Tiffany your target again? You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. But this episode, he was kind of the most, maybe not the most, but one of the more palatable versions of himself. Like he just kind of sat still. He sang a goofy little song that did make me laugh. He listened to women. He
yeah,
listened to Chrissy.
yeah, that's
Um,
true. I think,
yeah, like I can handle the goofy coach. I can handle the Magellan quote. He's aware that he just wants the attention.
yes,
It's kind of nice to hear him say
yeah,
out loud, like, I'm a performer. I like the attention. Like, it's both
yes.
like frustrating that he's not a little more aware of the fact that just because he wants the attention doesn't mean it's always the right thing to do to seek it out. Um,
I feel like,
And maybe this episode he kind of showed that he knows that, but I don't know. But I do think like he was a more palatable version of himself this episode, which actually made it a little bit less fun to watch him go. If he had been the worst version of himself this episode and then gone home, that would have been so satisfying. But still satisfying after last episode.
oh yeah, I have been struck a little bit by the in-game confessions that they're trying to entertain, and the post-game confessions that from Dee especially when she was talking about that argument with Jonathan. She was like, I was pretty sure I was going home anyway, so I just kind of leaned into that fight because it was going to make good TV.
Yeah.
And it struck me that a lot of them probably play to thinking about what's going to make a good TV moment.
Yeah.
I know that's dumb, but I always thought they just sort of pretended to like ignore the cameras and be themselves instead of being performers, you know. But they're
Yeah.
all pretty knowing performers too, or maybe not all of them, and maybe the ones that aren't, if get a little lost in the shuffle.
Yeah. I think that like I mean Rick is a great example of someone who is performing. And I think that when Jeff Probst at the beginning of the show says, I need you to give me everything, like he doesn't just mean I need you to try really hard to win, you know? He means
Yeah,
I need you to try really hard to be entertaining. And I think they're all aware of that. And they're all aware that they're there because the casting directors want them to create a really entertaining
right.
season. So I think that that makes sense. I think it's hard to tell how much all of them are doing that, how much some of them are ignoring it, like how much some of them know that they're there to be performers, but still just quite can't quite grasp how they're being received, which is how I feel about Coach. Like, I know now that Coach sees himself as a performer and understands that he's a little desperate for attention, but I still can't quite tell. It just feels like there's still a disconnect between how he thinks he's seen by the world and what he thinks his value is to the world and what it actually is. I don't
Hmm.
know. But he was funny this episode. And I'm glad that he's been voted out.
Yeah, same. I just there was two, three sort of character um, moments this episode really caught my attention. One was Tiffany again saying, you know, I just want to throw things and yell and blow the game up, but I can't do that because if I do, then I'm giving them a reason to vote me out. And
Yeah.
so making that very hard strategic choice to pretend, you know, to quiet your inner turmoil didn't feel like
Yeah.
entertainment play. It felt like strategy, hard strategy when you're that much in turmoil, and I would have been too. So my
Yeah, she's really good at that.
yeah, my respect for her game just grows every episode.
Yeah.
And sometimes a player that's playing from the bottom can really show you something. I know that this may not land so well with you, but Jonathan had a moment this episode that made me think he is a good player because he does something that I think is difficult for some ego-driven people to do, which is he invites, I think, genuine input. When he was lying in the hammock, he said, "This is what I want to do, but what about you? What do you think?" And he was listening for an answer. And that to me is somebody that is trying to forge connections. He's trying to consolidate. He's trying to get people to buy in. He's trying to give them a voice. He wants them to feel seen and heard. And that is a good player, you know?
No, I don't disagree with that. I think that Jonathan is playing a good game in several ways. I think there's something that I find unsettling about him that is sort of separate from gameplay.
Yeah, me.
Um, but I think that moment also calls up another piece of good gameplay, actually, which I want to call out, which was Ozzy did a pretty good job of planting Rick Devens' name. Um, in a way that picked up with everyone. And I thought it was really funny because you heard Jonathan then repeating the rationale that
Yeah,
Ozzy had given him.
yeah,
You know, we like see that right after. And I think it's really funny that Ozzy is successfully planting that Rick Devens is a threat because he's good at finding idols.
yeah.
When Rick Devens has found no idols this season, and Ozzy has like found almost every advantage. Like every advantage goes through Ozzy.
That's very true. That's really funny. You're right. That's good. My, I am often surprised by how sophisticated Rizzo's game is. I know you don't agree.
Sounds like kind of no. It's funny the way you said that sounded kind of like an insult to Rizzo.
No,
I'm often surprised by how sophisticated that man can be. No, but I think Rizzo is a good game player,
yeah,
and I think he's thinking carefully about people. I
yes,
think he made a good call about Joe. I
yeah,
think Cirie was right that taking Chrissy and Coach out was the right thing to do, but I understand why it wasn't Rizzo's first inclination because
yeah,
I think that Rizzo is closer to that sort of coach side of things than he is like Cirie's much closer to that sort of Devens side of things.
yeah. I agree. So where do we go from here? I think Jonathan is going to have an uphill battle now. He's got
Yeah,
Stephanie and Joe, maybe.
maybe, but those three were never the closest of the three. I actually do think that taking Chrissy and Coach out really takes the wind out of that group's
Yeah.
sail.
And I don't. I
Um,
think Jonathan has burned a lot of bridges with his gameplay. I don't see him forging new connections necessarily easily with some of the middle players.
Yeah, and this is what was wrong with his game, by the way. Like, I think that yes, he's doing a lot of things right, but I think he was banking on playing the kind of game that, like, a Boston Rob,
Yeah,
his mentor,
yeah,
can play.
yeah,
But, like, that's not a game that's super foolproof to, like, someone like Cirie then coming in and taking out two of your five-person alliance. Like, I
yeah.
think that he was burning bridges with the jury. He was
Yes,
burning bridges with a lot of the people on the beach.
true.
And his options are now limited.
On the other hand, the jury is now 2-1 for him if it came
That's
down
true.
to it.
And I think that the focus will shift now that he and Steph and Joe have been weakened to what is a much more interesting to me face off, which is kind of Cirie's polyamorous relationship
Yeah,
and the middle.
yeah.
Uh,
I feel like Suri might have wanted to hang back a little longer before she positioned
yeah,
herself as the power player. Because now a big target's going to be on her back, but
I agree.
um,
But I still think
it was the right thing to do.
it became clear this episode that people don't realize how much she's working with Rizzo. Like, I think
Yeah,
that's not clear to
I
everyone.
agree.
And I still think that Devens and Christian see her as an ally
Yeah,
rather than their immediate opponent. So I think, like, at some point, those guys will try to pull the trigger on taking her out. But right now, it seems to me like she has the power. Like, I think she has more of the relationships.
what's really funny too is now I can't quite see a big alliance taking shape. There's a lot of groups of two and three
Yeah.
for me. Um, I I guess maybe next episode we'll probably see a lot of shifting alliances or some clarity in who stands with whom. But I
But I
mean,
agree. I think this is more of like a second chance winners at war. Like, we've got a couple really strong pairs, but I think that it's going to be a much more fluid game than
yeah,
it even has been in like the last couple seasons.
yeah, maybe so. I think maybe now we'll really shift into a new era power dynamic, which
Yeah.
should favor the newer players. They're not even young.
Although I'm once again saying I think the most fluid Survivor was played between season 30 and season 40. And I think New Era
Yeah,
has been a little more reverting back towards strong alliances leading the way.
maybe so.
Like
Maybe so.
Rizzo, Savannah, and Soph won in large part because of their tight three-person alliance.
Yeah.
Like the season before that was the Honor and Integrity
Yeah.
alliance. Rachel being like season 47 being a big exception,
Yeah.
but Dee's
These
season
season.
she had a
Yeah.
very tight like 4 or 5 person
Yeah.
alliance.
She
So
sure did.
it was the four of them.
Yeah.
So I do think that the most fluid games were in those 30s seasons, in my opinion. Those were the ones with the most live tribals, and maybe like the early 40s too.
So does that mean that season 47 is the best season?
No, I don't think that being a super fluid game means that a season is a better season, actually.
What do you think the big lesson of Survivor is?
That's a really big
I know.
question.
Let's end on that.
Do you have an answer?
It's a cliche, but I think the lesson is know thyself. Really know who you are. The players that really know who they are um, probably do better. Uh,
But you know what's interesting about that is that a lot of the best Survivor players really changed how they thought of themselves by the end of the season.
I
We're talking about season 47. Rachel did not think that was going to be the game of Survivor she played.
right.
So,
Look at how much Emily found herself in her season. In a way.
kind of.
Um, yeah, I mean, didn't Emily start out really different? She was humble
But I think, yeah, but I
and
think that what
rebuilt
she
herself.
said in pre-press and what I don't disagree with is that she like kind of wants to push back. A classic Emily, she kind of wants to push back on like the narrative that she had on season
Well,
45.
don't
Like
they all?
she learned to be less blunt and less aggressive, but then I think she realized that like she didn't want her takeaway to be like soften yourself. Like that's not a great takeaway. So I think she was a little humbled, but then she also left and like I think that the story around her kind of overcorrected. You know what I
Maybe
mean?
so.
So like I and now I think she's potentially re-overcorrecting. I thought that I saw a short clip of Drew from her season talking about her. It helped me understand like a way of seeing her psychology on this season. On her season, she felt like she had kind of been pulled along and a little bit taken advantage of by several men on that season. Like Caleb kind of like did the whole taking her under his wing thing, but also kind of was just trying to use her as a vote. And then Drew and Austin did kind of the same thing and were kind of just using her to further their games. And she was kind of a passenger on those trains. So then what Drew said is that he thinks this season she's trying really hard to not be sort of pulled along and taken advantage of. So she's kind of like pre betraying a lot of people.
Oh,
She doesn't
yeah.
just want to be there to serve Christian's game. And I think that that helps to explain some of the erratic behavior whenever she is in a close alliance with someone who would be perceived as a stronger player than her. She tends to spill their information. I think that's like a decent explanation as to why. Like
Yeah.
she's trying really hard not to be a person that they pull along.
That makes her game make a lot more sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm probably going to change my mind next week because I'm going to think about it and think about all the players that knew themselves pretty well and were terrible players. Didn't get very far. Um,
um,
and I think
no, but I,
my favorite players are often the ones that reflect, are self aware, willing to grow,
yeah, I
willing
would even
to.
say that the lesson of Survivor is be willing to change.
Well, there you go. That that
But
leaves
maybe
us with
it's
a
both. It's know yourself, but be willing to adapt.
perfect. This sounds like a coach quote.
Oh no.
And
Well, I can't remember
then
if
get bludgeoned to
a
death in the
famous
Philippines.
Chinese monk said it or if a famous financial analyst said it, but
Is that person real?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Oh.
Okay.
All
Well,
right.
it's been fun talking to you. This was my favorite episode of the season.
Yeah, this was a good episode. I'm having fun.
Me too.
All right. Well, thanks for talking about it with me.
Yeah.
Thanks to everyone who is listening and watching. We hope you'll join us again next week
Yeah.
to watch Jeff Probst participate in a challenge.
Ooh, so interesting. I
All
can't wait.
right. I love you.
I love you. Bye.